Hello and welcome to Literary Notes, a podcast by the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. I'm your producer, Nathan Ureta, and this episode deals with one of my favorite exports from the Pacific Northwest, music. Washington has a reputation as the origin of a lot of famous musicians. Crooner Bing Crosby, smooth jazz legend Kenny G, rappers like Lil Mosey and Macklemore. The list goes on, and it's been written about in great detail in The Sound of Seattle, 101 Songs That Shaped a City. It was co-written by KEXP DJ Eva Walker and her husband, journalist Jacob Uitti. They sit down with library volunteer John Gahagan to talk about it. There's even a little cameo at the end from their newborn daughter, Hendrix. Here's their conversation. Enjoy.
Well, welcome to Literary Notes. I'm John Gahagan from the studios of the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. Today we are blessed with the presence of Jacob Uitti and Eva Walker. They are the co-authors of The Sound of Seattle, 101 Songs That Shaped a City. If I can read a little bio.
Yeah.
Eva is a DJ and radio host at the legendary KEXP 90.3 FM. Born and raised in Seattle, Eva founded the popular rock band The Black Tones with her twin brother Cedric. Together they've shared stages with Weezer, Death Cab for Cutie, and Mavis Staples, and have collaborated with Pearl Jam's Mike McCready. Jake Uitti is a writer based in Seattle. His work has been featured in The Guardian, Interview, Vanity Fair, and American Songwriter. He also co-authored memoirs with former NBA standouts Muggsy Bogues and Earl Curitan. Muggsy Bogues.
My guy.
Legendary NBA player, shorter than me.
That's right, 5'3".
Loved it. I really enjoyed this book. I'm a music lover, musician myself, and grew up in Seattle. So there's lots of places and people in here that I have like a 2 degree or 1 degree of separation from. So I really enjoyed it. Tell me, what do you think is the role of Seattle's geographic isolation in the development of a Seattle music scene?
Well, it's interesting you brought up basketball because everything in my life revolves around basketball. But just like basketball, the music in the Pacific Northwest, the musicians were forced indoors, right? So basketball was created because James Naismith needed a sport to play in the winter months when it was cold and rainy. And in Seattle, it is cold and rainy, especially rainy. And so people are often indoors collaborating in basements or garages. And I think also Seattle's separated from America in many other ways. There's not a ton of major cities around us. The closest one is 3 hours, and the next one after that is like San Francisco or something. So there is sort of an isolated component to being in Seattle, and so therefore the residents need to collaborate between each other. And so therefore I think different forms of music from hip hop to grunge and things were created as a result of that.
Yeah, I was going to say we're sort of forced to not worry about what's cool everywhere else. We have to just be creative and do what we think is cool, and then that maybe ends up being cool to the rest of the country later. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see any commonality with other cities that are known for their music, like Nashville or Austin or Memphis? Is there anything that makes certain cities become musical centers?
Certainly the city's roots, where it comes from and who is there. You mentioned certain cities that have historical black populations, right? Mm-hmm. So the blues and other forms of music are going to come out of places like Memphis. And in Seattle, it was sort of this end-of-the-road type of place. It was a last stop on the way to Alaska. It was a timber country for many years. And so I think those two things attract certain types of people, both country artists like Loretta Lynn and Willie Nelson, who we touch on in the book, and also weirdos who write songs about big butts and Teen Spirit deodorant. And so I think those two components have a lot to do with why Seattle's what it is.
Yeah, and just like what's been happening lately with transplants coming to Seattle, that was a thing before. My family came here in 1968 / 69, and they are from New Orleans, a very musical place. So people came up here for jobs. I believe that's why Quincy Jones was a family originally came here. And my grandparents came here because of Boeing. My grandpa got a job as an engineer with the Boeing NASA collaboration and helped put man on the moon. And that's why we're here, you know. And I don't know how many other musical New Orleans folks came here, but I think it's also just a contribution of people coming from those other places and bringing some of that with them. Because my family, there's not a whole lot of musicians, but they're definitely music lovers.
Yeah. Certainly you and your brother.
Yeah.
Any comments on the passing last month of Nasty Nez Rodriguez?
Groundbreaker.
Yeah, that was a bummer. Some folks on KEXP did like a tribute on their shows. I re-aired an interview that the guy who used to host the show that I'm on now, Gabriel Teodros, I re-aired an interview that he did with Nasty Nez, and it was awesome. But yeah, that was it was shocking to me.
Yeah, and it was, Sir Mix-a-Lot was a partner of his back in the day, and also he credits Ness with putting hip-hop on the map literally in Seattle and being the first person to play hip-hop on the radio and to also sort of back it and support it in ways, that the early genre, the burgeoning genre, didn't have a ton of support in Seattle at the time. And if it wasn't for Ness, then that wouldn't have grown. And him and Mix worked together on Nasty Mix Records and Sir Mix-a-Lot, and Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back is still in commercials today. I saw it in a new commercial yesterday, and so that's the lasting legacy in one way. Yeah,
I have a friend that plays in a sort of a Cocktail Lands type cover band, and he does the Whole Foods version of Baby's Got Back.
Oh yeah, nice.
Actually, a video of it was posted by Snoop Dogg.
Oh, amazing.
That's awesome.
Small world.
You mentioned the Spanish Ballroom and which Jimi Hendrix famously wrote a song about. Any thoughts on the teen dance circuit of the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, that's something that Marilee Rush has talked about a lot, who sang Angel of the Morning. And we talked with her. In the book, if you read it or listen to it, there's different interviews corresponding to different decades. And so the teen dance hall, the teen dance scene was humongous in the 60s, and a lot of popular radio came out of that, and there was a lot of that was a way to sort of break bands in the early days in the 60s, and the result of that was I think the dance restrictions and ordinances in the later decades in the 70s and 80s that restricted clubs from having live music, and something that people like Pearl Jam and Mike McCready really fought against, and McCready talks about that in the foreword here for the book. But I wasn't alive then. I sort of wish I was hearing those stories, but just these giant halls of hundreds of teenagers dancing to local music just sounds amazing, and it's that kind of stuff and that we're reminded about in the book of why a creative culture exists. We were at a bookstore last night talking about the book and signing some copies, and it's this multi-purpose cafe, bookstore, and you need places like that hold open mics and magic shows or whatever else, but you need places like that, and just like the teenage dance halls in the 60s, to have a creative culture that many in the city want to hang their hat on.
Shout out to the Vera Project.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. You talk in the book about the infrastructure that allows a music scene to be vibrant. And, one aspect of that, of course, was the teen dances, but also all the studios and whatnot.
Venues, yep.
Yeah. You talk about Robert Lang. Several artists have recorded there.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what you know about the history of Robert Lang Studios.
So, have you ever recorded there?
I haven't recorded there yet.
I was in a band that did.
I remember they were doing something where early on in my career where you could submit to be chosen to record there or something like that. Yeah. So I had been trying to when I was younger. But yeah.
It's this great studio in a mansion in North Seattle, I believe.
Richmond Beach.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've recorded there once or twice with a guy named Rob Benson, who's, shout out to Rob Benson, one of my best friends, and I love that guy, talented musician. And you go upstairs in the kitchen area at Robert Lang, and you see all of the posters of Dave Matthews and Foo Fighters and whoever else who's recorded there. And it's funny, anyone who's been in Robert Lang's studio will talk to you about the secret doors and things that lead to different rooms, and it's this kind of haunted mansion.
3 levels down.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah. And really great sort of center room to record. Giant big mixing board. but it's also one of many studios that are incredible.
London Bridge has a great
London Bridge has a history.
Yeah.
Soundhouse with Jack and Dino has a giant history.
We recorded in those two places.
Yeah. And then all the Pearl Jam guys own their own spaces.
Yeah.
And, again, not to sort of beat a dead horse, but that's the kind of stuff you need to have in spades, because not only is it opportunities to record, but, you never know when you might slip in to an open day for a cheap rate or something like that, and that gets a band its first single or something. Yeah.
I understand that Robert did a lot of the work himself in the excavating, and I'm just wondering, how did he get the permits to do that stuff?
Did he, or did he?
That's a good question. Tell me a little bit about the history of KEXP. I was in high school when it was founded as KCMU, I think.
Yeah.
Was it ever officially a part of the University of Washington?
Oh, yeah. Definitely part of the University of Washington. We still say,
is,
an affiliate of the University of Washington is still pretty much part of our traffic is what we call it. But yeah, it started KCMU. Oddly enough, my mom said she randomly was on the air once when it was there. My mom's a UW graduate, and one of her friends had a show, and she was like, "Yeah, I think I got to say you're listening to KCMU." Yeah. Basically, we got before I was working there, a very generous gift from Paul Allen, which has helped us get the space that we're in now, in the gathering space. And of course, he was a really big Jimi Hendrix fan, rightfully so. And he had the Experience Music Project. And so after that sort of collaboration with Paul Allen and with this new space, let me back up. It was KEXP before we got to the gathering space, but basically that collaboration with the Experience Music Project, they changed the call letters to EXP, and so that's what the EXP stands for, is the Experience Music Project. Yeah, he was a big advocate for local music and wanted, one of the things he was advocating for was music of the Pacific Northwest, Audio Oasis, and I remember a story, I don't remember which DJ it was, or if it was a DJ or just a listener, but someone was like, Paul came in toward the gathering space, the new area, and someone was like, "This is where we champion Northwest music." I'm paraphrasing the story, and he was like, "Pacific Northwest." He was very like Pacific Northwest, very particular on the region as far as music we covered. But that's just like it in a nutshell. But we're going on 53 years. Oh boy, I'm trying to do the math in my head. Started in 1972. We had our 50th anniversary, and I actually had a guy named Michael and Rod on the show, and they originally created Audio Oasis back in 1982.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. I read your the piece on Mary Lambert.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see that she wanted to be a middle school teacher, a middle school orchestra teacher in particular. I actually met her middle school orchestra teacher once.
Oh, really?
And he talked about what a prodigy she was. And she would come to him with scores she had written and said, "Mr. Clark, could the orchestra play this?"
Wow.
It's so cool. Yeah.
But I guess it's a lot of middle school kids lost that she chose a different career path, but they gained to the rest of us.
That's right. No, she's great. I've known her, oh boy, probably over a decade now. We were both in Youth Speaks, which we would meet at this open mic at Cafe Allegro every third Sunday, and people would share poetry and do music, and Mary's one of my peers that did music, and so that's how we met. And then I worked for her after her big boom with Macklemore. I helped her out as her assistant, and and so we hit her up for the book. We're like, "We're gonna put you in here. Can you, give us something?" But yeah, she's been really great and supportive, and she would have made an excellent middle school music teacher.
I noticed you used the word sticky as a musical adjective several places. Define sticky for me.
Catchy, sort of pop centric.
Sticks in the brain kind of thing. Okay.
Bubblegum, a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean like strictly pop music, but it's got a quality that is very memorable and sticks in your way the way pop music might.
A hook.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I noticed your piece on Black Belt Eagle Scout and Catherine Paul, which I thought was great since we are here on the lands of the Salish people.
Mm-hmm.
Any other native artists that come to mind?
Travis Thompson is another native artist. He's a rapper in Seattle, and speaking of Macklemore, he sort of came up under his wing or something like that. Macklemore featured him on a song called Corner Store that was played on, that they performed live on, I think maybe Jimmy Kimmel or one of the late night shows. But yeah, he's great. I think he's spent time growing up between Seattle and I believe a reservation in Arizona. He was also featured on the show Reservation Dogs, I believe it was called, the Hulu show, the popular show. So he reps his history and his roots very much, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's just another great one that comes to mind.
Got to have him in studio.
Yeah.
At KEXP when I was doing Audio Oasis. Another band, I always say it wrong, so I'm just going to spell it KHU and then EEX. And I've gotten to do a couple performances with them. There's probably 4 or 5 members of that band. And it's sort of a range. I want to say it's like hip hop, soul, funk, like they just kind of are all over the place. They're not in this book, but I wish I knew how to say it correctly, but even when I played shows with them, I avoided saying the name of the band. I'm like, I'm going to say it wrong.
I understand. I recorded a book on Pacific Northwest native art, and whew.
I was just like, I'm sorry,
Different.
I don't want to say it wrong. But yeah, KHU space EEX. I believe it's, yeah.
You didn't mention in the book Louie Louie. And I thought that was a bold move on your part because, you know, as at one time was considered.
We didn't
Did
even
you?
say anything
Well,
about
the song, the band that made it famous was from Portland.
The Kingsmen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the song, I think, originally maybe came up from an artist who was in the Bay Area who would tour on the West Coast. And so different bands along the West Coast picked up that song, I think including the Sonics, too. So that was, you know, an early sort of proto rock hit. And it was performed by many sort of garage rock bands or early rock bands, but it's not a Seattle song, or at least the most famous version is not a Seattle song. But I want to check out, or maybe there isn't a index, but I think it's mentioned somewhere. I think we tried to sort of add it in there because with 101 songs, it can be kind of tough. There's omissions that, you know, we would add if we did a second version or something like that. But so.
And the Kingsmen
we tried to add information.
Was on the list because when we were first thinking of the idea of what this book should be about, we were going to cover the Northwest, which include Portland and Idaho bands. So like Kingsmen, but also Built to
like
Spill. Yeah, people
Paul
like that.
Revere and the Raiders were from Boise.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay,
It's too much.
101 songs. Like we're already trying to cover 80 years of just Seattle proper, Seattle area like music. Like we have to cut out the rest of the. So
Yeah.
they were on the list.
What's next for the Blacktones?
Oh boy. Releasing a second album hopefully soon. I wrote it and then said I want to re-record it. So hopefully coming soon, a new record. We do have an EP that we will release because we did record the songs that we might as well release them. But another full length will be on the rise.
And when will we get a chance
after
to
that.
see you live locally again?
That's a good question. We just came off a UK tour and have a 1-year-old, so we're still trying to figure that out. But we did just get, this isn't local, so sorry, but we just did get a random phone call asking if we could go to Oklahoma to perform for some prisoners, and I've always wanted to perform to the prison population. So that might be the next thing. But again, unless you happen to be in Oklahoma, yeah. But yeah, probably something in the summer.
There may be an event in May actually around this book, but that's not,
that's true.
it's
But
not
I don't
necessarily set yet. But
Yeah.
there may be something in
And I'm
May.
not sure how
I
private
think on
that
your
is, though.
website it says there's a May gig.
Does
Oh,
it?
okay. Yeah. The
I'm too
manager
busy
handles
with the
that.
baby. I'm like, you tell me where to be,
Yeah.
and I'll bring the guitar and I'll play.
And what's next for you? What projects are you working on?
Yeah, I'm sort of always working on some books. We mentioned basketball at the top, and I'm working on a memoir with Jason Terry, who's a Seattle basketball player. He won the 2011 championship with the Dallas Mavericks. And I also just finished a book with Robert Parrish, who's a Boston Celtics sort of legend NBA player. And we just pitched a kid's book to this publisher of the music book here. So we're waiting to hear back about a Halloween-themed kids book.
Yeah.
Great.
So we have another collaborative work in the way.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add that I haven't covered?
Oh, well, we're glad that people like this book, that we're glad to be here and to talk about it. Seattle obviously cares about music, and it was cool to put together this sort of guide through the 80 years of Seattle history and Seattle area history, from Bing Crosby to people like Travis Thompson and Macklemore and people like that. And we're glad that people enjoy it, and I think long live music in the region. And
we hope that people use it as a tool to go find more music, because there's more than 101 artists over 80 years of Seattle music. So of course there are a lot of groups missing. Absolutely. It was really hard to narrow it down, but we had to sacrifice some people to make sure we covered a lot of ground genre wise, but also culturally diversity. All of that was important to us for representation for this book and for the area. So yes, there's several bands missing. Quite notably, one of my regrets, The Ventures. But we hope that you use this to go, okay, wow, I like this Slater Kinney. What else is in Olympia that, so use it as a tool, entertainment, but also as a tool that just go dig for more music.
Well, you did mention the Wailers.
Yes. So yes, go have fun with it. And
well, it was fun for me because although I think I know a lot about music, being an old guy, I'm not up on all the latest. And so,
what surprised you? To put you on the spot.
How many people and places I knew. My great uncle was friends with Bing Crosby. Duff McKagan grew up in our neighborhood. In fact, lived next door to a family friend of ours. I mentioned earlier, my cousin played with Jimi Hendrix, and I played golf with his dad.
Very cool.
And the places too, the venues, I've played at the Comet. I've played at the Sunset. You also mentioned the Tractor Tavern.
Yep.
What other venues come to mind?
Showbox, Sodo, Numos,
Paramount,
of course.
Clock Out Lounge.
In
the South End.
Yeah, the Columbia City Theater, which is no longer,
what it was, but yeah.
But we've played shows there, and I feel like you can count the number of South End venues kind of on one hand. And so I wanted to shout out the theater at least for that. But the Royal Room also.
And all these places are just woven into the city, We walk by them on our way to work, or we've been to shows or music that we listen to frequently, and some of the lines and lyrics are commonplace in the zeitgeist today that we still repeat. All this stuff is woven into our culture, and it's because of Seattle's geography and its history. And so we were hoping to honor it, with not only the songs, but with voices from people from the city, including, like I mentioned, a forward from Mike McCready, or an interview with Marilee Rush, or Nancy Wilson of Heart, or Sir Mix-a-Lot. And so we, give our voice to a lot of this stuff, but they also give their voice to it through these interviews. And so we hope it's thorough, but we also recognize that it's just, one way to enter the city's history.
To answer your question, Eva, one thing that surprised me was how diverse the range of artists that Sir Mix-a-Lot has worked with. I think of him as a hip-hop artist, but he's worked with all sorts of different artists.
Yeah, and he's actually a big Kraftwerk fan. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. Oh, there's a baby.
There's a Kraftwerk fan.
She was born to Kraftwerk, actually.
Our baby Hendrix, named after the great guitar player. Well, that's our cue to go.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm looking forward to reading other things by you. I'm going to definitely check out your book about Muggsy.
Great. Maybe there'll be a round 2, a second volume, and we'll come here again for that.
That would be great, and I will definitely check out the Black Tones.
Speaking
next
of
time.
Voices, John, I wish you could narrate my life. Wow.
Happy to.
An audiobook version of The Sound of Seattle, 101 Songs That Shaped a City, is currently in production in our studios. It'll be available with the Kloss ID DBC 31177. We'll let you know in a later episode when it's ready for download. If you have any questions or comments about the library, or to see if you qualify for our services, visit WTBBL.org or call us Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 206-615-0400 or toll free at 800-542-0866. This episode of Literary Notes is a production of the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library, based in Seattle, Washington. I'm your producer, Nathan Ureta. Thanks for listening.